Hey, and welcome to Worlds Collide, the podcast about moving abroad. I am your host, Victoria, and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today. So, before we start, I just wanted to let you know that there are 3 ways how you can support the podcast. The first one is subscribe. So, just push the subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast. The second way is you could just leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to the podcast. That would be great because that always increases the listenership. Or leave a comment if that is possible in your app. And then there is a third way. It's buy me a coffee. So you can chip in whatever amount you feel like. And the link is in the show notes, but it's also buymeacoffee.com/worldscollidepod. And there you can just chip in whatever you feel comfortable, whatever you want. Just buy me a coffee. That would be awesome. Hey, and welcome to Worlds Collide. So today my guest is Florence. And Florence is joining me today from Crete. So we talk about like how she ended up in Crete and all other things Crete or Greece. And also we talk about her book. Here it is, Aspasia. I butcher it in the meantime, but it's called Aspasia. And yeah, so listen to our conversation and listen to what Florence has to say about her move to Crete. So my guest today is Florence. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me
Yeah,
today.
thanks for being here. So tell me, where are you right now?
At the moment, I'm in Crete, in the village where I live. It's a small village in northeastern Crete. So that's where I am now.
Okay, and what brought you to Crete? Or like, yeah, why you in Crete?
So the story goes back a little bit. What you know what? Actually, I'm going to start with my parents. My mother loved to travel from a very young age.
Uh-huh.
And she was born in 1926. So she actually,
Mm-hmm.
after World War II ended, she went to Germany in like, I don't know, 46 or 47. So she was like always a very adventurous traveler. And she traveled a lot
Mm-hmm.
on her own. And then when she met my father, the famous story is when he asked her to marry him, she said yes. She said, but don't get me an engagement ring. Let's go to Europe. um,
Okay, money
right?
well spent.
Exactly. So you get a sense of the family priorities. So we traveled a lot when I was young. So I grew up in New
Uh-huh.
Jersey. And
Okay.
our first trips were like the Caribbean and small things like that. But then we took 2 big trips overseas when I was older. And on one of those trips, we did a small cruise in the Greek islands. And I was 14
Mm-hmm.
time. And it's really funny, Victoria, because I don't remember really anything from that trip, but I remember Crete. We only spent the afternoon in Crete. We went to the
Mm-hmm.
capital, Heraklion, and we went to Knossos, which is the famous palace in Crete. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and I remember the light. I remember walking around, and it just seemed very magical to me. And I always remembered that. Um, So then, flash forward, I took a couple trips myself
Uh-huh.
over the years when I graduated from college. And then when I was 27, I had a friend and we were talking about what are you doing this summer? And she said, well, I'm going to Crete. And I was like, oh, Crete. And I
Oh.
remembered that experience from when I was 14.
Uh-huh.
So this is 1990. I'm 63, so
Mm-hmm.
this is a while ago. And she said, well, why don't you come? She's like, you'd have to work as an
Uh-huh.
archaeologist. You could just, because I write, I'm a writer. You could just come here and write. So I did. So that was the summer of 1990. And when I was here at that time, I met a fisherman who lived.
Oh, fisherman. Okay.
Yeah. So, it took a little while, but eventually we got together as a couple. It took some months. And so I
Mm-hmm.
moved here. So actually, I'm sort of like a double expat because I lived here between 90 and 95.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was a great experience. But this is a very small village, and back then it was really small. It was like 40 people, and that
And were
was no
you at the
internet.
same place?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we have like a double. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I lived here then, and then I left in 95. I loved it very much, but I was only 32 and I'd grown up in a different way. And I think I was not, it was, it was rather difficult, but I wanted to be back like in a city environment because that's
Mhm.
what I was
Yeah,
used to.
okay. Uh-huh. You want to experience some city life.
Right. So
Yeah.
now we're going to flash forward almost 30 years and I'm retired and I'm thinking about where to live. And I came back to my old village, which is where
Uh-huh.
I live now. And yeah, that's what so that's how it happened. So it's sort of like I
Okay.
said, this is like phase two of my expat life here.
Faced. And so can I ask you, like in 1995, why you moved back? Did you move back by your own, or did you bring your partner with you?
No, I moved back on my own to
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey. I think it was just I I just was used to a very different way of life, and I think that at that time it was actually, this is something I think that maybe happens to a number of people. It's sort of like you go on vacation to a place that's very different from where you grew up. And it's maybe like sort of an exotic place or kind of a
Mm-hmm.
vacation place. And, you fall in love with it. It's very enchanting. And then you move there, and it's a very different experience to be on vacation in a place and to live in a
Yes,
place. And I
100%.
never had Right. And I never had a problem with the place, but I think what I didn't realize was what I needed. I didn't realize, at that time in my life, I was just in my early 30s. I wasn't ready to live this very, very quiet life. I think for a couple
Mhm.
years, it
Yeah.
was very different and, exciting. And then I started really missing my old life.
Yeah.
So, and I moved back. I wasn't quite sure, but then I got a job and I realized, no, I need to be here in New Jersey. I was in Hoboken, New Jersey. So, and it was very
Yeah.
difficult. It was very painful leaving. Um, but, life has a way of bringing you back around again. So,
Uh-huh.
at this point, I'm 60, turning 63 next week, and I'm retired, and the pace now suits me perfectly.
Okay, sure. Yes. I mean, sure, when you're in your early 30s, I mean, you think of
Yeah,
more like of career, maybe still going out, like
exactly.
having fun. But like now it's like, all right, I can take a more remote, quiet lifestyle.
Exactly. And of course, the enormous difference between back then and now is the internet. Like I would
Internet.
not have been
Yes,
able to do
100%.
this. I mean, there was,
Right.
right? I think email was just kind of starting in like the mid 90s. People didn't have like there weren't laptops, there weren't anything like that. So, I mean, back then, people it was writing letters and getting a letter was just a great thing. And during the winter here, the postman came only like 2 times a week. So
Mhm.
it's really, there wasn't a lot of outside communication. And
Yeah.
now I just, with my phone and with WhatsApp and with emails and everything, I'm more in touch with the world as we all are.
Yeah.
So it
Yes.
just doesn't feel as although it is remote here, and you could even say isolated, but the population has sprung up to like 120. Wow.
Oh,
Um,
wow. So that's like 300%.
yeah, the village has definitely grown. And so I have more communication opportunities than I did back.
Right. You also mentioned it in your first email when you reached out that you are relearning the language.
Yes, yes. Um, I should preface it by saying that foreign languages are my absolute worst subject in school.
Oh,
I
yeah. Oh,
studied
no. Yeah.
My
Uh-huh.
God, I hate Latin and Spanish. And I just, I just
Oh,
didn't like it, and I
perfect.
didn't do well. I know. I didn't do well in either of them, just not my thing. And then I moved here. And, and this is something I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be familiar with, if you move to a country and you don't know the language, it's so weird. Like, even if you had, like, I had, like, a partner who knew the language and knew English,
Yeah.
you feel like, I remember feeling like a baby. Like, I just didn't talk. Like, I just didn't
Yeah,
have a
exactly.
vocabulary. Um, and a friend of mine gave me a good piece of advice back then. She said, take a grammar book with you. Of course, now with computers, you can find all kinds of opportunities to learn a foreign language. But that's what I did. And I tried a couple times to learn Greek. And you have to learn a new alphabet. And that was like a hurdle I had trouble getting over. But then finally, after like a year, I was like, we're going to do this, and I started studying probably about like an hour a day. And
Okay.
it was slow, but I had a couple, it was very good for me to, when I started trying to read, and I started reading like children's books, like really basic
Mm-hmm.
children's books, that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
I've
by the
heard that
time,
before.
yeah, it was really, and then it's so exciting. It's such an adventure. You start to be able to talk to people, you learn new words, and it's just, I grew to really love it. And by the end of my 5 years here, I was more or less fluent. I could read, write,
Mm-hmm.
um, and
And
talk in
I
Greek.
also imagine when you are in a small town, not a lot of people speak English.
No, that's a really good point, especially back then. I would say that anybody above the age of 50, like the older people,
Did
they did not
not.
speak English.
Mhm.
No. There
Yeah.
was a fair group of maybe like men in their 40s, including my ex-husband, who had traveled on cargo ships. That was a very popular way back in the day for young
Ah,
Greek men to see the world. Yeah, like
okay, interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so they knew English. So there's that whole generation that they learned English because they traveled a lot. But yeah, so if I wanted to talk to my in-laws, I needed to speak Greek.
Mhm.
So then I had some opportunities to speak Greek when I came back to America, but it slowly kind of faded.
Right, yeah.
I actually took up Swedish, and so that, you know,
Okay, completely different way.
right. But that was my foreign language emphasis. But then when I moved
Mhm.
back here, it was so interesting. I was like, when I decided to move back here, I thought, okay, it's time to relearn Greek. So I've been doing that. And I work on it every day. Now it's not so much grammar, but I try to like read every day, and I take conversation courses online.
Mhm.
Again, that's something I couldn't do back in the day.
Mhm.
So it's going slowly but surely. It's coming back.
Yeah. Did you, move not move. Did you, visit in between? Did you ever come back between
Well, it's
those, I don't know, 25 years?
it's an interesting story because I left in 95. I came back again in 96 just for a short visit, and that's when I realized,
Uh-huh.
okay, unfortunately my marriage is going to dissolve and I'm going to stay in New Jersey, but still had
Yeah.
very good feelings here and good relations. And then
Mhm.
a couple of years later, I decided to come back. And this is the really weird thing is that I lived in New Jersey. I lived in Hoboken, right across from Manhattan. And so I took a trip here and I left New Jersey on September 9th, 2001. So I was here when 9/11 happened. If I hadn't, I
Uh-huh.
would have been there and it would have been, who knows? I knew people in Lower Manhattan. I went there all the time. Anything could have happened, or I would have seen the towers fall, but I was
Yeah.
here. So it was really strange. It was sort of like, Crete kind of protected me. It was a
Mm,
very weird kind of thing looking back. So that was the last time actually I was here was September 2001. And then I
that's
came back
crazy.
to visit. Yeah, I know, right? When did I come back? I think it was April 2023. So it was like 22 years later.
Mhm. And, I mean, you already said, like, the population just went up, but, like, how else did it change in the meantime?
One of the biggest differences is that when I was here, the only foreigners who lived here were women who had met a Greek man and moved here. So
Mm-hmm.
you really didn't see like men who were foreign and were living here on their own. But now, because of the European Union and just the free travel, and not only free travel but free living, that you can live
Yeah.
in a different country and work, there are people of like all ages and all situations who are not Greek who live here. Digital
Mm-hmm.
nomads. There's in my village. There's a fair population of women like 60 plus who came here on vacation and just really love it. Some of them have built
Oh, wow.
houses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like some couples, like it's amazing. There's like, these young couples like from Europe and they fell in love with the life here and they got a farm and they have goats. I mean, or they make olive
Yeah,
oil. I
cute.
know a
Yeah.
couple of couples like that. So that is
Uh-huh.
one of the biggest difference that there's more foreign people and there's a bigger variety in terms of gender and all kinds of things.
Was it easy for you to reconnect? Wait, still have some of your old friends there?
Yeah, it was really interesting because, unfortunately, and of course, a lot of the older people had died, but then,
Mm.
a fair number of them are still here. So that was really nice seeing them. And yeah, so there was definitely some people that I just reconnected with like right away. I have one very good friend here who is an American and she moved here at about the time I did. She still lives here. So we
Uh-huh.
were just, off to the races at the beginning.
Yeah.
Another friend of mine, it's really interesting. She's Greek. She's from here and she grew up here, but she wasn't living here when I was here. But we connected and yeah, and then there's people, other expats who I've gotten to know here, who are new to me. So yeah, no, it's been great. So there's been both a nice combination of people that I knew before, um,
Mhm.
including my ex-husband, and new faces and new people to befriend. So it's been really nice.
Did you have, like, any hesitations? Like, when you were still in New Jersey, were you like, "Oh, maybe I'm thinking about it, but still I'm not sure. Should I move?" Did, like, some doubts?
Well, you know what I really should I there's a big part of my story I sort of left out. I have been living, it's not exactly living, it's not that I moved, but I've been spending a lot of time since 2013 in Europe, mostly in Sweden.
Uh-huh.
As an American, you can come over and you can stay for 3 months. Then you need to be away for 3 months. You can do that. So
Yeah.
I was doing that in Sweden, and my dream actually was originally to move to Sweden and to get residency there,
Uh-huh.
and get a job and everything. But then the pandemic happened,
I see.
and as we know, that interrupted everything. And by the time the
Mhm.
pandemic was over, more or less, I was in my 60s, and it just
Right.
wasn't really possible to get a job. Um, and also during the pandemic, there was a long period when I wasn't able to go to Sweden because of the travel restrictions. So I went to London. So I started spending time there too. So I'm still, it's interesting because I'm still like an American resident, but I
Mhm.
would spend like, chunks of time over here. And I've been doing that for a while. Um, so I already had it in my mind, I already was living like sort of here, not
So you
quite half.
always had your bags kinda packed, and you always, like, knew how to leave and leave everything behind, not just like, "Oh, I have to do this huge checklist of things."
I got everything down to like one suitcase basically. I in 2013 I actually moved back to New Jersey to help my mom who was elderly, and we lived together I lived here with her for 4 years. And I remember when I moved with her, I knew that at one point, she was older, she was going to die and we'd need to leave her
Yeah.
house and sell it. So I think at that point, I really started divesting myself of my
I
possessions.
see. So you
And
were
I
already
just,
planning ahead.
exactly, so let's say I had like five sweaters. I was like, okay, you maybe need like one sweater or like, four pairs of leggings. It's like you need one pair. So I really started slowly getting
Uh-huh.
everything down. And I would leave things places. I had friends that were very kind and they let me like in Sweden, I had one friend, she let me, I would leave like my coat there and my boots and things like that.
Okay,
So I
sure.
had like little, like a squirrel, I had like little deposits. And like in
Yeah, so
London, the hotel I
uh-huh.
stayed in. Yeah. So it sort of worked out that way.
And but so then you like you were always prepared for moving abroad then.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I had it in my mind for a long time that that was something that I wanted to do. It's just, and it was interesting because when I really understood that it wasn't going to work out in Sweden, like that was really hard. And that might also be something your listeners can relate to. Like sometimes you can fall in love with the country, but like that's not enough to be able to get any kind of like residency or anything like that,
Yeah.
and it's a rather it can be rather a painful experience when you realize that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out despite my
Mm.
absolute best efforts. Um, but at that point, interestingly enough, I decided to come back to Crete just for a visit. And it just was much easier for an American to get some kind of temporary residency here
Oh, okay.
than it
Can
was.
you tell me a little bit about the technicalities, like how you started? I mean, did you just look on the Greek Craigslist or Zillow for a place to live? Like how did you start?
Well, basically what happened was my American friend here told me, she said, there's a kind of residency here. It's called financially independent person residency. You should look into that. And
Mhm.
the nice thing about the residency I have now is you only need to be here 6 months out of the year.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm actually really still an American resident because I'm only to keep
Uh-huh.
this residency, you only have to be here 6 months out of the year. So there's a whole process. So, I went online to like the Greek embassy and it is like you have to, there's a lot of steps you have to go through to do that.
Uh-huh.
I had to go back to America and I had to get a visa to come back here. And then once I was here, I had to apply. You have to get an FBI check, which was
Uh-huh.
interesting.
Okay.
Um, I passed. Um,
Good.
Yeah, so that is something I would say also to your listeners, anyone who's thinking about doing it. Like you just have to be patient with the paperwork.
Yeah,
And I
did it
don't,
take a long time?
looking back, it didn't take a really long time. I would say from the moment I started, I went from my visa to when I finally got the temporary residency. I think it was probably about 6 months, which is pretty good. But
Okay, that's still doable, yes.
yeah,
But like
that
when you're
that's
waiting at that moment, it feels a lot longer.
It does. And also, like, honestly, the paperwork, looking back, it's not, they didn't ask for anything like really unreasonable, but there's always going to be at least like one piece of paper that's going to be a little challenging or weird. And
Mm,
honestly, the thing that happened to me, which looking back, I can laugh, but for my FBI check, they had to take my fingerprints and they couldn't take my fingerprints. There's something, I don't know, it's like genetic, but my fingerprints weren't showing up. So I had to go back.
huh.
He was like, okay, you have to use this special moisturizer and you have to,
Yeah,
don't wash your
okay.
hands. And so things come up that you don't expect. And, I just thought, oh, go and do my fingerprints and I'll do the check. And they,
That's
they
real quick.
couldn't do
Mhm.
it. So it was I mean, so that is something you have to have a lot of patience. And I would also say, don't be afraid to ask questions, like, because embassies have like their list online. And I remember at the Greek embassy in New York, they were like, if you have questions, ask us. I wrote them 3 different emails. I was just very, polite, but I was like, you have to get like a medical check, just saying that you don't have TB. So that is also a piece of
Mhm.
advice I would have. Like, don't be afraid to actually contact the embassy. There's people whose job it is to help you with the paperwork.
Uh-huh. And then when you were there, did you had a place to stay?
Yeah, so I when I had come here, I came here twice to visit, and then the second time I asked the man who ran the hotel where I was staying. I said, I'm thinking about coming back and applying for my residency. Could I stay in a room in the hotel then? And he said to me, "Oh, well, what about our studio?" And I was like, "What about your studio?" So they also had like a little studio apartment for rent. So
Uh-huh.
I know, it was great. I was like, "Oh, great." So he showed it to me and I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to stay here." So that's where I was staying. Um,
Okay.
and that was a verbal contract. So that was easy.
Right.
Yeah,
Is it in Greek like or in Greece often that everything is verbally?
that's a good question. I think it might be more common here than it is in some other countries. I mean, there's definitely like, official paperwork here too, but I think there is still sort of an, I don't know if I call it an underground economy. I
Uh-huh.
think it's not uncommon here that you just sort of like make a
Yeah.
little arrangement with somebody and that's that.
Yeah. So and then the apartment was already like furnished and you didn't have to worry about any of that.
Exactly, exactly. And that is an advantage, like, also, I would say to people, like, if you are want to move to a place that's kind of like a tourist place, if it's not a skiing place, like a place like this in Crete, like the winter, people are very glad to have someone stay. It's not
Right.
overcrowded.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a good time, like October, November, to go then because it's going to be much easier to find a place. And then you'll have some months to get used to the place. And then when spring comes, if you want to get something a little more stable, you can arrange something then.
Do
So,
you I was just wondering because like in the last years it was always in the news that in Greece it's super hot. And
mm,
do you
mm.
do you guys have like AC or is it like is it bearable to be in there when it's so hot?
Well, that's an interesting question because I go when it's hot. I don't spend like
Yeah.
July and August here. Yeah. When I lived here all those years ago, nobody had air conditioning. Like even the stores in
Yeah.
the city, maybe like in Athens they did. But now
Mhm.
like it's pretty common that most of the places have air conditioning.
Okay.
Especially like the tourist places and new apartments and things. And honestly, I just am not here in July and August. It's too hot for me.
Yeah.
I have very fair skin and I'm like the queen of sunscreen. Um, and I just, so I have to be careful about that. The other thing about Greece is, as we know, it's a very, very popular tourist destination, but
Yeah, it
I've actually
must be
learned this
packed.
word. There's a wonderful Greek podcast, which I will recommend to anyone who's interested in Greece and learning Greek. It's called Easy Greek. That's helped me a lot with my Greek. Um,
Yeah.
I actually take lessons with the woman who runs the pod, her and her
Mhm.
husband. I take lessons with her, but they introduced me through their podcast. There's a word called hypertourism. It's like too much tourism.
Uh-huh, I
So
can relate
yeah, right. So that also makes it difficult to be here in the
to be
summer
there.
because on the one hand, it's great because there's all these direct flights and things like that. But it's just like the bus going from where I am to Heraklion, the capital. I mean, the ride should take, I think it should take like 2.5 hours because they have to stop all the time. Um, it's like 3.5 hours sometimes or four
Yeah.
hours. So I have nothing against tourists.
So but it's
Yeah,
but, like, if there are, like, penguins or lemmings and then you cannot get to places, it's a lot,
exactly.
like yes, because I mean, it's just sometimes really crowded.
It's true. And in my little village, something has happened which back in the day would have been inconceivable, but like we don't have that many tavernas here, but you actually have to like, make a reservation. Like
Oh,
there's
yeah,
not enough,
wow, mhm.
yeah. If you want to like have a meal in the evening, there's not the infrastructure is not enough for the number of people that are coming here now.
Yeah.
So that's
So
also something.
so that was a really good tip that you just said, that, like, if you're planning to go to Greece, then rather go in fall So when
Hmm.
it's less touristy. But also I'm imagine like it will be very pretty then there too.
It's beautiful now. And the thing about the fall is too, is that the water has warmed up, so it's a really good time to go swimming. There's just a little bit less people. There are still tourists now, definitely. But it's just like it's just eased up and
Mhm.
the sun isn't as strong, so you can go outside. I mean, when it's like sometimes it is just so strong that it's like you just go and hide in your house in the middle of the day. Even in like
Yeah,
June, it's
I
really
bet.
strong. But now
Yes.
it's perfect. I love it.
Nice. And now let's talk about your book. It's called Aspasia. I hope I said it right.
No,
Aspasia?
actually, it's called Aspasia. Everybody does that. I know.
Aspasia. Okay. Wow.
That's okay. I feel like I should have like a little like, instruction on how to pronounce it. No, everyone says that. It's
Uh-huh.
it's it's a Greek woman's name, but it's not very common. So yes, so
Okay.
it's Aspasia.
Aspasia. Okay. And it also is about like this woman, Katrina, who lives in Crete. So is this also based on your story a little bit? Because it sounds like a thriller more?
Yes. I think what's based, Katerina is like me because, she's an American who had fell in love with a Greek man and moved to a small Greek village. Um, the village I live in is a seaside village, so it's like a fishing village. Now, Katerina lives in a mountain village. So
Mhm.
at the part of Crete where I'm at, we have a lot of mountains, but then we also have the seaside. So, but there are villages that are just like up in the mountains. So I set that story in a village I didn't use the name, I changed the name, in a village not too far from where I live that's in the mountains. So that's a difference. She is an English teacher. And I just like for a little period, I think it was about a year, I taught some of the local children English in my
Oh,
apartment.
nice.
And it's so
Uh-huh.
funny to come back now because they're all grown up. It's really cute when I see them. I'm
Uh,
like, ah. So that is a similarity, although it's sort of fiction is so interesting because you can change things. Like I was a, English teacher for maybe like a year for like, a couple little kids, twice a week. But from that, I could envision Katerina's world, which is, she teaches like older kids. It's really like a career for her, which it never really was for me. It was just kind of a
mhm.
nice thing to do. Um, and so that is a similarity that we have. And there are certain things in the village that are definitely similar, from my experience. But I think those are the things where I have most in common with her.
Uh-huh. But, and where can you buy your book?
My book is available online. It's on Amazon. You can buy it as a paperback or an ebook. And it'll be ready in a couple weeks. I'm in the process of sorting out an audiobook. But it's something you
Oh,
can
cool.
order. Yeah, but you can also order it from your local bookstore. So
Yeah.
it's out
And
there.
would you describe it as a thriller on the top or like on the front page it says a novel of suspense and secrets?
See, it's really interesting. I was trying to figure out the genre for the book because I would call it, if I could say this, like a literary thriller because it's not a thriller or a mystery in the sense that you don't know who did it and there's like a mystery about what's going on. Like in this book, there are two crimes that are committed and the reader knows what they are right away. It's like this is what happened. I'm describing the crimes. It's not the kind of thing where something is being withheld and you figure it out at the end or something. Um, and I think also that even though there's two crimes in the book, I guess I would call it like literary fiction just because it is very much about someone's interior world and describing like the place in Crete. But having said that, there are two crimes that are committed, and I try to keep up the tension in certain ways.
Uh-huh.
So it's sort of a hybrid genre, I think.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, definitely check it out. I will once I finished my other book, I will start that one because it sounds really interesting on the back. It's like already how it's written, it's already like, oh, this is like a good read.
Oh, thank you. I should warn that it's a rather dark subject matter. So just, um, but it is very, very much about life in Crete and has a lot of details about that too. So
Okay.
I think hopefully people would find it interesting. It's very much
Yeah.
about being an expat and about being caught between two worlds.
Okay. And is it also about like cultural differences?
Oh yeah, completely, completely.
Yeah.
And different values. And I think also it's about the difference between kind of growing up in like a city or a town and like a small village. And that could be
Right.
any
Yes.
country, a small village that kind of like the locals, people protect their own. And there's so much
Mhm.
unsaid, and there's a lot of, you know what I mean? Have you seen the Netflix series set in Greece called Maestro in Blue?
No.
Ooh, it's really good. When I saw that, I was like, yes, because I think there are certain things in that are like with Aspasia in the sense that there is a bad man in the village who has just too much power. And people are afraid of him and afraid to cross him. And again, that is not unique to Greece. That could be, anywhere in the world. Just that someone, just a bad person has too much power and can basically do what they want.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think that, and it gets tricky because I mean, like in my village, there's no police force here. There's no like, there's nobody like, I mean, we have a mayor, I guess, but there's nobody like in
Yeah.
charge. And the nearest
Right.
police station is like two villages away. Do you know what I mean? And so if you think
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
back in the day, and what if like the two policemen who work there are related to the bad man who has all the power? Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's
Yes.
kind of like the fix is on.
Could be
No
also
one's going to
very
hold him
corrupt.
accountable.
Yeah.
Exactly. They'll be afraid of him too.
Yeah.
So
Do you have you experienced any cultural differences that are sometimes hard for you to get used to?
I think that there are some differences that are kind of charming and amusing. Like one of the things is that, the Greek sense of time is famous, but for
Oh,
instance, in American English, we say sooner or later. But in Greece, they say later or sooner
yeah,
because it's probably
yeah.
going to happen
It
later. You
could be
know what I
later.
mean?
Yes.
It probably is. And so that's just something you get used to. And because I grew up very much with like a very, I hate being late. I feel terrible if I'm late. But
Oh
here
my
it's
God, me
just like,
too.
eh, you know, um, there's just more of a casual sense of things.
Does
So,
that reflect to you, or does it mirror on you that you are now maybe a little bit less stressed about time?
definitely, because you're just setting yourself up for, unhappiness if you're going to like
Yeah,
want everyone here to be on time. That's just, like don't set yourself up for that. It's just like, okay, that's just how it is. We're
yeah.
supposed to meet at 6. Okay, well, let's see what actually happens. So that's an example of something that's, kind of charming. Something that's kind of like where I feel like it doesn't really work for me, but it's not a big deal. Is like, it's so interesting. Greeks like to eat really, really late. They like to eat dinner really, really
Mhm.
late. I can remember when I was here 35 years ago being in Athens and going out to eat dinner at midnight. It was like, what? And the place
Oh,
was so
wow, that is
packed. It's
late.
like, what? And here too, like even last night I went to a local just a local cafe, and some of the village dudes were inside and they had like all this food. They're like, hey, look, come eat. And I was just like, it's 8:30, I already ate dinner. Like I don't, you know what I mean? So that's something that I I see that that's the way here, but I kind of stick to my thing where
Yeah,
no, I like to eat dinner early. That works better for me. So once in a while, I'll eat dinner late. Like if somebody's like, I've got
sure.
fresh fish or something, I'm like, yeah. Um, so that's an example of something that, I don't really fit in with, but it's not a big deal. But I
How
would say
does
the
that
biggest, Oh, sorry.
How does that work with getting reservations in a restaurant? So
That's the
you
thing.
always
I
like,
eat at home. I cook at home.
yeah.
Yeah, I leave that to other people. So, but like I like go out for lunch. Like just today, I was out to lunch with some friends in a local restaurant
Hmm.
at like 1. But we were the only ones there at 1. People will start coming at like 2 or 3 or like having lunch at
Oh, so they
4. I mean,
also
it
have
really,
like a late lunch.
yeah. And
Every
because
but
they
I mean
eat so late,
also so late, they also probably sleep in a little bit longer because they don't get up at 6
exactly.
then.
No, and they're not looking to have a big breakfast. That whole thing, like in America, like going to a diner at like 6:30 or 7, or English, like the English fry up, like that's not on here because they're not hungry in the morning because they ate a late
Mm,
dinner.
yeah,
So it's,
you're still full for
I
midnight.
exactly. So I have a different clock in terms of eating, and
Yeah,
it's all good. People are used to that with me now. They don't,
yeah.
um, but I would say the thing that was most like actually cultural difference that was disturbing was the attitude towards animals. I It has changed immensely in the time I've been gone.
Uh-huh. Do you mean like
That was very
stray
hard.
dogs and stray cats or
Yes, I do mean
yes.
that. And it just, and also, but fair enough though, this is a rural area and that's not how I grew up. We're like, animals are for food or a dog is for protection. So you just keep it
Protection?
tied up all the time. It's like you gotta like take your dog on a walk, you know what I mean? You have to,
Mm, yeah.
and you know, now it's changed so much. And at least in my village, it's wonderful. There's this like team of foreign women and they like collect money for the cats and they like if we can we catch the ones that are sick and you take them to the vet and there's someone that comes a tourist but she's a vet and she sterilizes them. I mean it's really
Mhm.
these ladies are
Yeah.
on it. I'm just so impressed by
Yeah.
them. The more I get to know them the more I really appreciate that. There was nothing like that when I was here, and sometimes it
Yeah.
was very hard for me, really painful to witness, which I won't go into details. Um, but just that's not how I grew up.
Yeah, no. I remember like my family, my mother's side of the family, she's from Poland, also a very small village. And they're like the dogs or the cats. I mean, whatever. If they're dead, then they're dead. Nobody cares about them, you know. It's like, oh no, I cannot take another dog. Like here, just throw it in the well or something. I mean, that was also in the
Yeah,
90s. Now, I'm sure it changed, but it was always very, I don't know, hard to see.
yes. And I remember my in-laws had this dog that was tied up all the time. And I was like, I am going to befriend this dog and I'm going to start taking it on walks. And I remember I came into the village. I guess I bought a leash somewhere, or maybe made a leash from rope. And I came into the village with this dog and a rope, and people were like, "What?" It was just,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean? It was
What's
like,
she
it just
doing?
blew people's minds. They're like, "What are you
Yeah.
doing with this dog?" But now, flash forward, a lot of people have dogs, and they have dogs on leash, and there's a lot more veterinarians, and there's just a
Mhm.
lot more. The consciousness about animals and what they need and stuff, it's just gone
Yeah.
up like a million percent, which has made it
Yeah, nice.
much
Well, that's
easier for me
good.
to move back here. Much easier. Because that was actually something I was worried about. I was like, I can't, I found that really painful, but that is not the
Was that
case
back
anymore.
then was one of the things that bothered you
Oh,
most?
yeah. I found it extremely painful.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have like any negative experiences since you moved back?
I think. I mean, no, nothing really, or nothing that would, make me not want to be here. I think that because I lived here before, and I think that because I have, somewhat of a grasp on the language,
Uh-huh.
um, I was very well prepared to be back.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in this kind of, definitely not Greek, but so it's like, but I lived here before. So I'm also like to a lot of people, I'm like, not exactly, I'm kind of local, if not, you know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah,
like kind
you're
of
not
like,
the stranger. You're just like
no.
a familiar face.
Exactly. A friend of mine is Irish, and I guess they use the term blow-in, like someone who just blows into town. Like I'm
Yeah.
not a blow-in. I was 35 years ago, but now it's like I'm a known commodity. And I can speak Greek, which to a degree, so that really helped. So I think that all that made it easier. So back then, that was hard. It's like nobody knows you. You show up, and there's kind of like any places like that, particularly a small village, though. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
well, who is this person? You know.
Yeah.
And also, I think a thing to understand is that, like with Crete has had so many people over the years, the centuries, millennia, who've come in and like the Turks were here for 400 years. There was the war. There was like different things. So there's sort of this initial instinctive distance with foreigners sometimes. But then the thing about Greeks are they also have this amazing hospitality. So I think if you show that you have um, goodwill and you're, trying to learn Greek and stuff, then, all the doors get open to you. But like if you are driving through Crete and you go to some like kind of obscure mountain village and you drive in and all the men in the tavern are like watching you and stuff, but that's just, they've been invaded so many times. That's almost
Okay.
like in their DNA, like who's
I
that? What do
see.
they want?
So
They're not like us. So,
it's like more
but this
instinct.
yeah, so it's really interesting. But I think also now that there's more and more foreign people here, depending on the village, there's less of that. Times have changed.
Right. Also probably tourism.
Hmm.
They used to like
Yes,
strangers.
exactly. That's a big difference too. The tourism is much more intense now than it was when I lived here back in the
Yeah.
day.
All right. I think we're coming to an end. Thank you so much. Or is there anything that you wanted to add to your life in Crete?
Um, I think what I just want to say is if whether it's Crete or whatever country, I just really encourage people if you're thinking about moving abroad or even just spending time abroad, like go for it. You know what I mean? Like do your homework, get your paperwork in order and, try to learn at least a bit of the language, but like, give it a shot. You can always go home.
Yeah,
I think
true.
it's really worth it. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
really, really worth the effort, no matter how it turns out. And it really expands you as a person. It really doubles your world. So I think that that's probably just what I want to say. And then I just want to thank you for having me on the show. It's been really
No,
delightful.
thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you for being here. All right, that was it from this week. So don't forget to check the show notes. All the information that you need, it's all there. And don't forget to subscribe and, of course, support the podcast in any form that you want to. All right, and then, of course, if you want to be a guest or if you want to leave a comment, you can reach out to me via email. It's worldscollide123pod@gmail.com, or you can find me on the socials, more Instagram, at worldscollidepod. It's one word. All right, and that was it from this week. I will see you. Bye.